Good morning again. Carrie Burson, Carrie, hello, and myself, Carole Sepe, welcome you to this legislative forum as co-president of the League of Women Voters of Frederick County, Maryland. This year has marked the 100th birthday of the League of Women Voters. The League understands that each person's vote is of tremendous value to our democracy and that citizen education is imperative, having secured passage of the 19th Amendment. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that encourages informed and active citizen participation in government. It works to increase citizens' understanding of major public policy issues. The Frederick County League's 2021 legislative priorities are to continue to monitor ethics within local government and monitor initiatives, legislations, and policies on solid waste management, affordable housing, and adequate public facilities. Each year, the local league hosts a breakfast for Frederick County elected officials to provide an opportunity for league members and guests to hear firsthand officials' accomplishments and priorities for legislative action in the coming year. Due to the unique circumstance of the coronavirus pandemic, the League is holding the Legislative Forum in 2020 as a virtual event via Zoom instead of the usual breakfast format. The forum will be posted on Facebook since we are not able to live stream right now, and it is being recorded. We are joined today by Frederick County Executive JGardner, Senator Ron Young, Senator Michael Hough, Delegate Krimm, Delegate Karen Young, Delegate Dan Cox, Delegate Jesse Pippy, Delegate Ken Kerr, Council Member JDonald, Council Member Hagen, and Council Member Steve McKay. I don't see Jessica Fitzwater, but she may be able to join us later. Although we were not able to meet in person, we're still taking audience questions. We have received questions from membership, and attendees will hopefully be able to post some questions on FaceTime Live if we go live. Now let me introduce our moderator, Rochelle Kithcart, Chair of the Legislative Forum Ad Hoc Committee. Rochelle will go over our agenda and forum rules and get us started by calling on our guests for their prepared remarks. Thank you, Rochelle.
Good morning. My name is Rochelle. Thank you, Carole and Carrie. Good morning. My name is Rochelle Kithcart, and I am the chair of the ad hoc committee for this legislative forum. We appreciate that you all were able to join, and thank you so much for all who are attending. Let me explain the forum rules. Carole has gone over them briefly, and I'm just repeating some of our rules. We ask that all the attendees keep their voice muted until they are called to speak. In the interest of time, we are limiting each legislator's prepared remarks to 4 minutes. Our league board member, Dr. Rosemary Orthman, will be our timer, and all she has waved to us, but now she will demonstrate what that timing will look like. Can you give us that demonstration, Rosemary?
Whoops, sorry about that.
No.
Yes, I have, here we go. I have 3 cards. I'll hold up the yellow, which is a caution sign that you have only 15 seconds left. Then I'll hold up a pink card saying you have only 5 seconds left. And finally, a red card, meaning your time is up. And this will be the noise that you will hear saying your time is up.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. Now we will get started with County Executive JGardner.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for hosting this annual League of Women Voters breakfast, though it is in a little bit different form than what we're accustomed to due to the circumstances. But we always appreciate the input of the League. We know you do your homework and that you're very thoughtful and well balanced when you provide us with information and input for us to make decisions on. You should have all received a copy of Frederick County's legislative package for the upcoming legislative session. It includes 3 bills and a number of position statements. So I really don't want to go through the bills in great detail. One of the bills was introduced by Councilman Steve McKay, and I assume he will speak to that one. But there are the first two bills. One is a transparency in home buying. This comes from a citizen concern and complaint about how they had a special assessment between themselves and their developer for water and sewer for their home. And so this bill would prohibit the ability of developers and builders in Frederick County from putting a lien for a county fee or tax onto a new property. And so it's about transparency and making sure that this information is disclosed. And I do think things like water and sewer should be fundamental to the purchase of a home. The second bill is related to the Maryland Public Information Act. It is related to disclosure of the exact salaries of county employees. This is a bill that has had some controversy. Our interest here from the county is to protect our average county employee from identity theft because of having their specific exact salary disclosed. So what this bill proposes is that salaries will be disclosed for all the elected officials, all of the county executive and county council appointed positions, and all the county leadership division directors. But for other employees, we would disclose the salary range. I know that Senator Ron Young has asked for an attorney general's opinion on this. So this bill may change as we enter into the process. The third bill, which is one you've seen before, related to filling vacancies on the Board of Education, I'll let Councilman McKay speak to. Our bigger issues are really reflected in our position statements. We know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We know that there are budget issues both at the state level and the county level. And while it appears we're going to have some reasonable stability through the current fiscal year, we have concerns as we move forward. So our primary concern is for local budget security. Certainly, we want to make sure that as the state balances its budget, it does not create further strain on local budgets, including the county's budget, obviously. 42% of the state budget is identified as local aid. Almost all of that comes to the Board of Education. 85% goes directly to Frederick County Public Schools, 4.5% to our community college. And out of the rest of it, the bulk of it is actually highway user revenue. So budget security, education funding, assistance for our continued response for COVID-19, obviously for distribution of vaccines is very important to us. And we will be advocating on all of those larger issues in the county. MC Keegan-Air is not on the call today. One of her priorities has been following large solar utility projects, and we will be supporting local zoning authority for that. So with that, I thank you for your interest. I encourage you all to come at 10 o'clock and watch the delegation meeting.
Thank you so much, County Executive Gardner. We appreciate your remarks. Now we will hear remarks from Senator Ron Young.
Thank you. Good morning. In this kind of time frame, I'll try to just cover things, a couple things very briefly. We did contact the Attorney General's office way back in October. Had not heard from them. We checked back and they told us the person that's going to give us the advice is off, but they said they would try to have it to us within a week or two. So it's been quite a while waiting for it. We're going to have an unusual session this year. A lot of it will be done virtually. All our committee meetings will be done virtual, either from our office or at home. They are still working on that. And we will only go into to vote. So we may be working from our office, our hotel room, our home for committees, and we'll go on the floor just for voting. We are probably going to deal with governor overrides. I think he vetoed over 30 bills last year. I'm sure we're not dealing with all of them, but we'll go over the ones that leadership considers to be the major bills. My committee is going to be working on social justice, police reform, criminal justice, whatever term you want to put on it. We already had 3 days of hearings previously. We have one next week, and that's probably going to be our major emphasis when we get back. I have 21 bills in, certainly don't have time to go over those. I think about a third of them are on health and safety issues, and the other are a variety of other things. I'll just make the list available rather than trying to go over it at this time. We will all be reachable. We're going to try to keep the best contact we can. People that testify can watch our hearings and call in or go on chat and get questions to the committees as we have them. The floor hearings will be streamed so that people can watch them. They obviously cannot participate in the floor hearings. So we'll be trying to work together as we always do. It's going to be an unusual session, and we're anxious to hear from the league and everyone else in the community. So we're here and available, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Young. Now we'll hear remarks from Senator Michael Hough.
Well, thank you very much for having us. And Senator Young's right. It's going to be an unusual session. Actually, in the Senate floor, we're going to be in almost, it looks like phone booths. They've separated the desk and put plexiglass around all of them. I think the Senate has less of a challenge than the House. Obviously, most of you have probably seen the chambers and been down there and know it's a very tight space. With the House, you have 141 members. The Senate, I think, is going to be able to function more easily just because of the size of the chamber and the less number of members. With that said, it's still going to be a challenge. All of our committee hearings are going to be virtual. We will be voting in person, though, for all legislation, both in committee and on the floor. As Senator Young said, the schedule is going to be much different, though. And so one of the things, actually, we're going to have less bills, too. One of the things I've advocated is that we have too many bills that we've been dealing with during session. It's a 90-day session. We're very limited. So especially in a session like this, we need to prioritize to do what's important. And so going into session, each senator will be, if the rules adopt it, which I think it will be, limited to 25 bill introductions. And some of the priorities, at least for me, Senator Young and I both are currently on judicial proceedings. So policing is going to be an issue forefront. I would hope that we're able to work up a compromise similar that we did 4 years ago on this issue. You may remember in the wake of the death of Freddie Gray and the riots in the city of Baltimore, there was a call for police reform. It was very tense, very difficult topic then as it is today. But nonetheless, the Senate was able to come together and pass by a vote of 46-1 a package for police reform. So I would hope that cooler heads would come together and we're able to do that, because we're talking about public safety. We're talking about legislation that will literally affect people's lives. And also, I think we can't forget, at least from our committee's perspective, crime is still an issue, especially in Baltimore and in that region. Violent crime is still a very prevalent issue. So I have some things I'll be working on that. And just lastly, I'll say, continue to be very cognizant for small businesses and the struggles that they're going to face in this pandemic. By the time we go into session and then by the time we get out, a lot of small businesses may not still even be around because of the pandemic and what we're going through. So I think it's very important now that we not raise taxes, that we not pass onerous regulations. And in fact, we look for ways to be helpful. I know later today, we're going to talk to the liquor board. They've got some proposals maybe to help restaurants. So we're looking for things like that, things to help parents who have become homeschool teachers, anything we can do to help people right now and not have the government place additional burden on them.
Thank you, Senator Hough. Delegate Krimm, we'd like to hear your remarks, please.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So nice to see everybody As you know, this is one of the stops on our annual listening tour before session starts. And I'm glad we were able to do this, even though we couldn't meet in person. And I congratulate you on the number of people who have who are in attendance here today. I think you have a lot of the delegation, if not all of us, and a lot of the county council. And also the county executive is also on the line, which I think it shows the public how much we are concerned about hearing the priorities of the league, and also making sure that the public knows how session is going to go this year. As Senator Young and Senator Hough have said, it's going to be very different. And the leadership is doing their best to make sure that we are all protected and we are all safe. And they have put in place a number of protocols that will help us achieve that objective. I know that I am concerned, you can't go into this type of situation and not be concerned. You cannot let your guard down. You have to understand that anybody, and it would be that nobody would be doing this on purpose, but they could be asymptomatic and not know that they could convey the virus. So everybody has to be very concerned and make sure that they follow all the protocols all the time. So I'm on the budget committee, the appropriations committee in the House. And so we've had plenty of briefings throughout the interim on budget matters. Secretary Brinkley has told us it's going to be a 2-year recovery. We're not going to be able to come back in and fund everything we've had before because the revenue isn't there. Our sales tax revenue is down. Our income tax revenue is down. All the components in our revenue package are down. So, but we still have an obligation to fund public education, which I'm sure the governor will do in his budget. And the secretary has also said that's going to be a priority for the governor, is going to be COVID relief. And we do have an economic matters committee in the General Assembly under the chairmanship of Derek Davis. And he is also putting together a COVID relief package. And I know that small business is going to be a very much a focus. So we're also waiting for some positive signals from the federal government that there is going to be more COVID relief coming to state and local government. I know that the governor is certainly waiting for that until he has his final budget prepared. And we have spending affordability committee next week in which we will make recommendations to the governor on spending affordability. And I don't think, I know we will not have a decision from the federal government whether more funding will be coming from them into our budget. Okay, I have 15 seconds left and I see Rosemary has put up her little card. So I appreciate this opportunity, and please contact us. As Senator Young says, we are always available. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Krimm. Now, Delegate Karen Young.
Good morning, everybody. Just for the record, I do prefer to go by Karen Lewis Young. It's a promise I made to my father, and I have been trying to honor that. Thank you very much again for hosting us, and happy anniversary to you all. I worked with several of you in planning some celebratory activities throughout the community. Many of those had to be canceled, but we were able to do a few virtual ones despite the pandemic. Speaking of the pandemic, 100 years ago, as your predecessors expanded the right to vote, we were also in the midst of a pandemic. So an amazing accomplishment that during that time, the League of Women Voters and its predecessors were able to accomplish such an enormous feat. And that's a message for us today, that despite pandemics, our work must persist. So I have sent you all a list of my legislation. Right now, there's about 11 bills. I'm just going to summarize a few of them. One that might be near and dear to the League's heart was brought to me by the Frederick County Commission for Women. And that bill sets up a commission within the state to look at best practices in voter expansion, looking at early voting and other methodologies to increase voting, particularly among low turnout communities. Most of the rest of my bills, well over half, deal with healthcare issues. I do sit on a healthcare committee, so either healthcare expansion or affordability. I'll tell you about a few. One which passed last year in the House, but not the Senate, allows pharmacists to administer certain medications and injections, and that will certainly be timely this year. Originally, the bill was conceived to particularly help those dealing with mental health challenges and addiction challenges, to offer more comfortable and increased opportunities. There's another bill that would allow oncologists to mail cancer treatments directly to the patient's home, certainly something important in our environment today. And another bill that would give caretakers more flexibility. It allows individuals with disabilities to choose family members. In fact, it's called self-directed, to be active in their care. As we move through the session, we will be updating a number of local entities and organizations. You'll certainly be on our list. And I think we need to make an extra effort this year to communicate, because in person will usually not be an option. So thank you very much, and please stay in touch and share your questions and concerns.
Thank you very much, Delegate Lewis Young. And now we will have Delegate Dan Cox.
Maybe not.
Good morning, everyone. Am I off mute now?
Yes.
It's an honor to be
Yes.
here. Thank you. Good morning. And I just wanted to say it's great to see everyone and all the participation. I know it's an early Saturday morning, and it's exciting to see our local officials engaged for the public. So it's an honor to work in Annapolis with a great team. Our delegation is, I think, blessed with a lot of opportunity and interaction with one another. And I've had opportunity to work across the aisle with Carole Krimm. Last year in particular, we had a bill that would provide small business with a pretty incredible tax discount. And that ended up morphing into a Senate bill that did pass. And I think that's kind of a real opportunity, I think, and particularly this year when you look at the small business situation that we're in, where about 30% of the small businesses in Maryland are potentially on the rocks for closing. So I think that that's going to be my focus. Obviously, also, I am on the House Judiciary Committee, and in the policing reform considerations that are the primary focus this year in front of our committee, I'm going to be supporting law enforcement officers vigorously and trying to find ways, as Senator Hough indicated, of making sure that cooler heads prevail. For instance, a blanket reversal of the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights would be inappropriate. Let me explain why. The current law allows for protections that I think even people on both sides of the aisle would completely support, such as a whistleblower protection. If an officer brings forth allegations or information about wrongdoing within a department, the officer may not be retaliated against. Additional protections include non-disclosure of an officer's private family information. In an age of internet, the last thing we want is the officer's family, income, assets, children exposed. And those kinds of issues are all part of this discussion as to how much information in a disciplinary proceeding can be shared with the public. So I'll be fighting to protect officers, and it's a real honor to be there for everyone, and I'll obviously be open to listening, whatever the input might be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Cox. Now we will hear remarks from Delegate Jesse Pippy. Thank you.
All right, well, it's good to see everyone. Obviously, a lot's been said so far, so I'll try to focus on what's not been said. So this past legislative session, which it's hard to believe was actually this year, because it's been such a long year, we had some priorities. One was a domestic violence bill. It was actually a top priority for the Maryland legislative agenda for women, which was making the act of strangulation a felony. So proud of my bipartisan work there and the support from the other delegation members. But just during this pandemic, strangulations have actually doubled here in Frederick County. So it's an important piece of legislation. And I hate to say it, it's important for women, but it really is. Another legislation that we passed was a bill protecting children from sexual violence. That was another bipartisan bill. Proud to have the support of my colleagues here in the delegation. And then another bill that passed related to Maryland's gang statute. So Senator Hough was instrumental in working with me on that bill. That also made white collar crimes an issue because, when we think of gang violence, there's some preconceived notions of what a gang member is, but in fact, we have a lot of people committing white collar crime and they need to be held accountable as well. So that was a great bill, bipartisan as well. As been said, there's been a lot of discussion of what this session is going to look like. We really don't know because we don't know what's going to happen over the next 30 days. We're assuming it's going to be some sort of abbreviated session, but there are some critical issues that will need to be addressed. Police reform, social justice, as Senator Young mentioned, whatever the name may be. I also serve on the Judiciary Committee, so we'll be front and center working there to support law enforcement, but also ensuring that the community has full faith and confidence in our law enforcement. The couple priorities, the League of Women Voters has been very vocal about fair and balanced redistricting. So this is the big year. We're hoping that Maryland will lead by example and end the practice of gerrymandering so that the people in this county and throughout the state feel that their voices are being heard. So I look forward to seeing a fair process moving forward, and I know that the League looks forward to that as well. As far as my legislative priorities for this session, we're going to keep it lean and mean. I'm not going to put in as many bills as I did last session, which is the recommendation, because we don't know what we're walking into. But there are areas that I will be focusing on. Domestic violence is an important issue. We've seen that highlighted throughout this pandemic. I will be improving ethics in a few areas pertaining to the judiciary. And then also I have a bill related to law enforcement. I just would be remiss if I didn't say that this has been arguably one of the most difficult years in recent memory. I think as elected officials, we feel the pain of our constituents. There's lots of issues ranging from kids not in school, businesses that are struggling or going out of business, and then there's health concerns, and mental health concerns. And so I think collectively, we all need to do what we can to work together to solve some of these greater issues. This is the time that we get to work. And if we can find common ground, I think we'd be tremendously successful in solving most of the issues that we see before us. So I look forward to working with each of you, both at the local and state level. And I look forward to keeping dialogue open with the League moving forward. And I appreciate, again, for you inviting me here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Pippy. Now, Delegate Kerr.
Morning, everyone. As my colleagues have mentioned, that this year we've been asked to limit the legislation that we're going to introduce. So I'm reintroducing 3 bills that didn't quite make it through both houses before the clock ran out. One has to do with making sure teachers know what to do if a student has a seizure in school, and Senator Young has that bill over on the Senate side. Another has to do with the title that we call podiatrists, allowing them to use the title of podiatric physician. And another is a consumer protection bill for how people who have bank accounts that have been idle for 3 years, how they have to be notified before those funds are turned over to the state as abandoned. There are 2 bills that are new this year for me. One has to do with expiration dates on pharmaceuticals that are still in the manufacturer's bottle. When a pharmacist dispenses the medication, they're required to put a date of 1 year from the date of dispensing, even though the medicine itself may not expire for months or perhaps even more than a year beyond the date that it's expired. The dispensing label covers up the manufacturer's date. So that could save some people some money. So, and then another one is a bill that Delegate Krimm worked on last year that I have taken over because it goes through the subcommittee on which I serve, long-term care facilities. And this has to do with assisted living facilities and optimal staffing levels and what is appropriate training for people who work in those facilities. In the interim, I know all of us have been just inundated with constituents asking us to help with their unemployment. The Beacon system was overwhelmed at the start, and then it was upgraded to a new system, and some of the records didn't get ported over, and so people who were already suffering and behind in their expected unemployment payments had to start over again. And so it's just been, there's no other way to say it than it's just been a mess. And we've been able to help many of our constituents with that. Over the summer, I was named to the Oversight Committee for Quality Care in Nursing Homes and Long-Term Care Facilities. And we worked over the summer and created a report that was delivered to the governor December 1st, outlining what our priorities are for the nursing homes and long-term care facilities. We've also been helping people with motor vehicles administration, even though they're not to be evicted from their apartments and houses at this time. Some landlords have been evicting them, and so we've had to help people with that. So it's a challenging year, and we're going to focus on things primarily that have to do with the health and well-being of Marylanders and Maryland businesses, trying to keep everyone physically healthy and economically healthy, and to get through this crisis together. So I look forward to working with my colleagues to accomplish those things this year.
Thank you, Delegate Kerr. Now we'll hear remarks from Council Member JDonald.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in today's meeting. I will try to keep this fairly brief. The things that we have to deal with on the council this year, of course, we have to deal with redistricting. Our district numbers have gotten fairly out of balance, so that will be an issue before us later this year. We'll have to draw together a committee to deal with that, and then we'll have to take a look at it. I've got some bills looking at historic designations in the county, something that I and Jessica Fitzwater talked about a number of years ago, and then due to some legal issues, we had to set aside. This year, we have some serious budget challenges. Hopefully, the federal government will surprise me and will get its act together, and we'll get through another package to help out these folks who are about to lose everything on December 31st. But if they don't, I see a very dark second half of fiscal year 21 and going into 2022. Something I think we should all think about, this isn't really an issue in terms of a law, but something that's occurred to me is that we have a big assumption that once this pandemic is over with and we all go back to normal, we won't have to see anything like this again for another 100 years, and then it will be somebody else's problem. We may be entering an era where we need to be prepared for this more quickly, because it concerns me that this could happen again. It doesn't have to wait 100 years. It could be 5 years, it could be 20 years, but we need to be prepared. We really need to think about what we would do if this were to happen again. The county has taken steps for this. We purchased a building. We've got a supply of PPE. JGardner took the lead on doing this, so we are prepared if things get bad again, and that's a wonderful thing. But I think we all need to take some time to think through, what do we need to do if something like this happens again in 2 or 3 years? We can't have a situation where people are calling in with unemployment and getting jammed up, and you guys are getting overwhelmed with folks asking you for help. We need a better system overall. The last thing in terms of issues for this year is the position statement we have on the constant yield. I think we need to change the way we look at constant yield, and calling anything under constant yield or dealing with constant yield, calling it a tax increase when you don't go to constant yield seems to me to be preposterous, and I think we need to change that. I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but the fact is, if you have a constant rate of $1.06 and the constant yield says you should be at $1, you could go to $1.04 to get the same amount of money, and you literally cut taxes to $1.05, you have to call that tax cut a tax increase. That's sort of Alice through the looking glass kind of thinking, and I don't understand why the state continues to do this. So I'm hoping that we can change that. So that's what I have for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Donald. And was Councilmember Jessica Fitzwater able to join us?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm leaving my camera off because my children are maniacs in the background, and so I'm going to try to keep this fairly brief.
No worry. Thank you.
I want to thank you also, thank the league for inviting the council members this morning and for giving us all the opportunity to meet together, and for all of the work that you do to keep the community informed on really critical issues. So I really appreciate all the work that the league does. I know you all have our legislative package, and so one of the positions statements that I had put forward is just in support of a bill that Delegate Krimm is going to be introducing that allows a portion of the Maryland Strategic Energy Investment Fund dollars to go towards the Healthy Soils Program. I know that Councilmember Hagen has also worked on this issue in the past, and so I hope that the delegation will support Carole Krimm's efforts on that. I also wanted to thank Delegate Pippy for all of his work on domestic violence issues. I would encourage the delegation to support the MLaw agenda for this upcoming term. There are a lot of really critical bills on there, including the one that Delegate Pippy spoke about regarding strangulation. There's also another one that eliminates marriage as a defense to sex crimes, which to me is just, that shouldn't be a defense. And so I hope that the delegation will support that and some of the other bills on the MLaw agenda. I know Delegate Karen Lewis-Young is also working with our Commission for Women on a bill regarding the centennial of the women's right to vote and expanding some voting rights issues here in the state. So I know you all are really working hard, and I really appreciate all of the initiatives and priorities that you've shared today. I, of course, encourage you to support overriding the governor's veto of the blueprint for Maryland's future. This is not the time to be taking a step away and a step back from our students and from public education. This is a time where we need to really invest in those students and thinking about the challenges that they've been facing over the course of this year. Lastly, in terms of the county, some of you may know that a bill I introduced this summer passed to create a domestic violence coordinating council here in the county. So we are in the process of getting that up and going, and very much looking forward to the different agencies and organizations to be able to work in a coordinated effort here in the county. We know that domestic violence is on the rise during this pandemic, and so whatever we can do locally to coordinate our efforts will be very critical. And lastly, the climate mobilization work group that the county is undergoing now based on a resolution Councilmember Hagen and I introduced this summer is, and my time is running short as you can hear. We are up and running. We have over 50 volunteers in the community who are spending hours and hours of their research and expertise meeting and developing best practices for the county as we look for ways that we can better build climate resilience here locally. And I'm very grateful for their work and very much looking forward to seeing what they bring back to us next year. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this morning, and great to see everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Fitzwater. And now we will hear remarks from Councilmember Kai Hagen.
Good morning. Sorry that you weren't able to do this in the normal fashion, but I appreciate the effort to, hold it in a virtual forum. Of course, we've heard from some of the delegation about them, how they're going to have to be dealing with it. Fortunately for the council, with the fewer of us and not being from all over the state and everything else, it's been much easier to function in a virtual environment. And I think while there are some downsides and some technical glitches, it has worked very well. And I expect that will be continuing for a while. I do appreciate it also coming after Jerry and Jessica and having them talk about some of the things I don't have to mention, like the changing of the district lines or the climate emergency mobilization working group and some of the other things. There are a number of things I have coming up, but overall, I think it's important to point out not just legislation that might be introduced, but things that are always ongoing and that are going to be very important. One is that Livable Frederick, which is the comprehensive plan, the master plan that was passed after 4.5 years, about what's been a while now, 1.5 years or so, since it a little less than that since it was passed, is in an implementation phase. It will be continually in different ways, but we're working on areas around the Sugarloaf Mountain region and the very important 355-85, or otherwise known as the South Frederick Corridor. This isn't new legislation, but it's new activity that's very important, very significant. And I certainly strongly encourage people to pay attention to that, especially with the South Frederick Corridor. There are great opportunities there around improving that area in terms of its economic viability, mixed uses, residential possibilities, other things. But in any case, those things are happening now and will be over the course of much of 2021. I've got some small things coming up, smaller meeting in terms of the complexity and the time demand around things like vehicle charging stations, pesticides, one that I think is thing on my docket right now, if you will, putting together and discussing with people and planning on back in December of last year. So it's been literally a year next week since the first time it was raised in public discussions. After a 4.5-month period or almost of working with people throughout the community and going through various iterations and drafts, we have a version that has been passed on to county executive and the Frederick County Council's legal counsel for review. I look forward to getting their remarks and thoughts about that back soon, and to have it be submitted for a workshop or 2 or 3 with the council. But it's very significant effort. There's a lot more moving pieces. There's a full-time position, an advisory commission, the development of a plan, a master plan around racial equity and social justice within county government, and action plans in various departments and divisions. But one of the key things is that it will essentially require that all of us, everything we do, a major executive policy, all legislation, be viewed through the lens of racial equity and social justice. So that's coming up. People will be hearing more about that very on our combined docket. And my time is out, so I just want to say, be careful, stay safe, and do your best to, wear your mask, social distance, do all the things that the governor, the county executive, the public health department have been recommending. We want all of us to get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Hagen. And now our final council member will be Council Member Steve McKay.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I'll just tick off a few things from the prior year before looking ahead towards 2021. So first and foremost, I was very pleased that the voters supported the 2 charter amendments that I've been working on for almost 2 years to enable special elections for vacancies in the first year of the terms of county council and county executive. Those amendments also improved the appointment process that we used. So I was very pleased with that. About 76% of the voters voted in favor of those amendments. I was also pleased to work with the administration. County Executive Gardner brought forward some important amendments to our zoning ordinance. And I had some suggestions for that in terms of improving and strengthening the approval criteria for zoning changes, as well as for improving the requirements for neighborhood meetings that were ultimately folded in to the legislation, which passed the council. So I was very pleased to work with the administration on that. I was very pleased to work with council members Hagen and Donald on a bill to define and then expand where we can hold farmers markets in the county. That was something that I thought was not well addressed in our current ordinance. So I think we have a better situation now for something that's very important in Frederick County, where we value our agriculture as much as we do. There are a number of other things that I feel very good about in terms of what we got done in the last year. And of course, you never get anything done on your own. So I appreciated working with my council members on a variety of other initiatives from the past year. Looking ahead, County Executive Gardner mentioned the third piece of what's been my initiative on special elections, and that concerns vacancies on the Board of Ed. So for our first 2 pieces, the council and the executive, that required a charter amendment and the voters. For Board of Ed, since that's in state law, that's something that we worked with the delegation and the council last year, and County Executive Gardner as well. And again, very similar. It's about enabling special elections for a vacancy in the first year of the term of a Board of Ed member. Last year, we had the full support of the council, the county executive, the full support of the delegation. Normally it would happen, but 2020 has been, what it's been. So that bill passed the Senate, but got stalled out in the House of Delegates as the session came to a close. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. I have high hopes that we can get that done this year coming up. Some other things that I'm working on. This last year, the state passed legislation enabling property tax credits for disabled veterans with 50% or greater disabilities. I'm hoping to bring that forward, working on legislation on that. I'm also looking at our current retired veterans property tax. It really hasn't been, I know we've made some changes to that in the prior council. It hasn't really been utilized by our retired veterans. So I'm hoping to bring that forward and relax some of our current restrictions on that. Something that's been talked about quite a bit, and I'm actually disappointed in myself for not getting this done. So I'm hoping that we can get this done coming into next year. And that's looking at our school construction mitigation fees. Since for a long time, the fees that we charge, wow, that went quick. So we need to bring the fees up to where they should be, and we'll hear more about that. I'm also looking at our MPDU bill, and I'm working with the Affordable Housing Council, making some changes there, and I'm hoping to look at the APFO and adjustments there. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member McKay. And now that we have heard remarks from all of our delegation, we do have a couple questions. The first question will be to all of the officials, and anyone just raise your hand and give us an answer. And again, we'll try to limit those to about 2 to 3 minutes to answer. The question is, how has COVID-19 influenced your priorities for 2021? Just unmute yourself and give us the answer, please.
Okay, can I talk?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So I didn't talk about my legislation when it was my time, but the legislation I'm bringing forward is in response to the COVID-19 and how that's influenced our society. So my first initiative is on telework. Telework has worked very well for a lot of businesses and government, and it's also relieved a lot of our traffic congestion. So one bill that I'm working on is a telework policy bill for state employees, and also asking local governments to put a policy in place. I think most governments, local governments have a telework policy already. I don't think that's going to be asking too much. So it's going to be government across the board having a telework policy, and then also encouraging private business to do telework policy also. And we may have some amendments to the bill going forward regarding the private sector. The next thing I'm doing is broadband legislation. We all know that broadband is a significant issue. It's not only for the rural areas, it's for Baltimore City. It's for Montgomery County, in the heart of Montgomery County. So the governor has had an Office of Rural Broadband. So I'm going to take, my bill would make that just the Office of Broadband. And it would create legislative oversight, and then also speak to infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, and to put that in place across the state. And of course, that's going to take funding. So what I have in my bill as a starting point, just a suggestion, is that we look at the sports betting money. And I know that we said we're using that for education. Well, this is for education. We need to put adequate broadband in for our students. So there is equity in education, but it also will help with telework. It also will help with telehealth. So there's a good reason to use that money for broadband. This is our time to do something significant in that area. The next bill I have is something on cybersecurity. We've had cybersecurity issues, so I'm bringing forward a bill regarding cybersecurity, working with the Department of Information Technology, and hopefully the cybersecurity committee we have in the legislature will support that. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Delegate Karen Lewis-Young. I'd like to add something on this question as well. One of the bills I didn't mention that I'll be bringing forward is a telehealth bill. Clearly, many of us have, if not most of us, have had to use telehealth in the past year. And it has proven to be very successful, very efficient in many cases. So there will probably be more than one telehealth bill in this environment. But what mine does is relax some of the more stringent restrictions on audio visual, because some of our most vulnerable populations may not have that audio capability. community. I think you'll see a lot of work in this area. We may not long-term maintain the kind of telehealth availability we have today, but certainly this will jumpstart improvements in telehealth accessibility that we've been working on slowly up until now. Thank you.
Thank you both for Delegate Krimm and Delegate Lewis Young. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this question? And now I saw both hands go up. So can I have County Executive Gardner first and then Delegate Pippy?
I just want to share that COVID-19 has really significantly impacted the focus of my office in county government. We have really tried to use our federal CRF funding to support our community. And I have to tell you that county employees in many divisions are working very hard to support people. We have put out about 20% of our money to support small businesses and our Main Street businesses. We actually saw who got PPP grants from the federal government in our county. And while businesses of all sizes received that money, the larger businesses received the bulk of it. So we have really focused on our small businesses right down to our sole proprietors with that funding. We have worked to support our community with rental assistance, food assistance, legal aid to help against eviction. We've supported our child care providers. We have supported our health response and bought over $5 million of personal protective equipment, not just for county government, but for community need, which would be our hospitals, our nursing homes, and any other kind of medical facility that needs PPE. So right now we have COVID surging again. It is surging again. It is everywhere. And it is of great concern to me. Our hospitals to our west are filling up faster than our own. And it's just I have real concern and fear about public health is what's happening. So from the standpoint of money and budgets, I want folks to understand our federal money ends at the end of December, which is a few weeks from now. So in November, Dr. Brookmeyer said to me, do I need to give notice to the people doing contact tracing that we are going to lay them off on December 31st? And I said, no, we can't do that. We have to find a way to continue our healthcare response. We have to find a way to continue our rental assistance, our food assistance, and some of the other things that we are doing. So there's a great burden shifting to local government to take care of people and as well as our businesses during this pandemic. And that failure to have any money continue after December 31st is a huge problem for us on the ground. So I just want to tell folks, we are working on it. We are committed to taking care of people and to doing that health response. And so that is really a primary focus of many of people in county government right now. So we're committed to protecting our community and supporting our economy and balancing that need. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive Gardner, Delegate Pippy, and then did I see Delegate Cox? Okay, and you will go right after Delegate Pippy. Thank you.
You know, I just wanted to say collectively that, you know, each year there are always hundreds, if not thousands of issues throughout our state that need to be addressed. The problem during the pandemic is that certain issues are more prevalent and more pressing. And so I think, you know, as a delegation and even with our local leaders, we need to prioritize getting people through the situation we're in now. And in Annapolis, there's a saying, sometimes less is more. I don't know if this would be a good time to try to increase expenses on businesses or increase regulations. I mean, we really need to adapt to help people in the situation we're all in now, whether that's with school or small business health. You heard some concerns from County Executive Gardner. So I think it behooves all leaders, elected, appointed leaders, to adjust and to adjust the needs of the folks in this county, because there is a lot of struggle, there's a lot of suffering. And so this year, I'm going to be flexible and I'm going to listen, and we're going to figure out what we got to do to get people back on their feet. And so, yeah, this pandemic has changed the approach that we would typically take going into session, at least for me. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Cox, please. Delegate Cox, please.
Thank you. And I would echo some of those comments, and I would add that I have two pieces of legislation that I intend to bring forward to advance the discussion about how to help individuals during this difficult time, particularly focused on parents with children who have been out of school and small businesses that are teetering on the edge of bankruptcy because of the shutdowns by executive orders. The first one is called the Student Education Equity and Funding Act. And basically the gist of that is it's a model act across many states, and that will offer a parent $1,000 a semester if their school does not provide in-person instruction for their children and academic opportunities and extracurricular opportunities in person. That'll be an opt-in program. It'll be a program that can be reviewed and verified every semester. The second one, and because our parents and our kids are hurting, I mean, we all understand this. We're at a very difficult time right now. A lot of kids are stuck at home. They are trying their best with their teachers who are just, God love them, just doing everything they can to provide an opportunity virtually, but it's not cutting it. And many, many parents are bailing. Just to give you an idea, when I was in Philadelphia working with the president's team, we learned that New York schools had about a 34% withdrawal rate of parents getting their kids out of the public school system just because of the harsh lockdown of New York. So we want to make sure that we keep our schools strong, and our parents and our kids are the key to that. And so that's the purpose of the bill. The second bill is called the Consent of the Governed Act. And that's to basically say, look, if we're going to have these elongated executive order emergencies, what we need to do is we need to allow the legislature to provide oversight. I don't think that that's a partisan issue. I think that the statute actually contemplates that. It says that the executive orders are only to extend for 30 days. Obviously, there's an exception in there that says the governor can continually extend it. But the idea in the statute itself was to mandate legislative review of all of these acts, including the draconian focus of shutting down our small businesses when we go over to the big box stores. And like I was yesterday at Sam's Club and Walmart, over 500 cars, hundreds of people in those stores. And yet we're putting the burden of this lockdown on small businesses. And so I think we can provide a consent of the governed approach where we can allow the people's representatives to review these executive orders and have a learned discussion in the process of protecting people who clearly need protection. But thankfully, it's a 98% recovery rate at this time. So I think we can continue to make sure that we review the science and make sure that the entire voice of the people is heard. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to the discussion with some of my colleagues this year.
Thank you, Delegate Cox. I do have a follow-up question. What is the source of revenue for your $1,000 to parents per semester for schools?
So the Model Act has been passed in other states. It does not take away funding from any local public school. It sets up a separate state fund that allows a credit to go in it if the parent opts in, and then if it's not used, obviously it can go back in general fund. That's my understanding. It's not, there's no, I don't have a fiscal note yet because the draft is in process. I do have a rough draft, but I don't have a fiscal note back. But the theory in every other state as it's been produced is that it's a set aside grant process that is reviewed semester basis and does not remove any funding from the local school. So in other words, if you have 30% of your kids withdrawn from a particular jurisdiction, that's going to hurt the public school. But in this process, I think you could end up saving the local public schools money because you have an incentive to provide a vehicle for that parent to obtain in-person activities without a complete disenrollment. At least that's the way I'm hoping to focus the act.
Thank you. Now, while we know that it is 9:30 and you all have another meeting to go to at 10 o'clock, I would ask if we could add maybe about 5 or 6 additional minutes because we have a second question. And once I ask the question, if you can keep your remarks or your answer to 1 minute, that would be great. The question is, and this is for the senators and delegates only, the Maryland House of Delegates Work Group on Police Reform recently recommended 12 police reform measures, including requiring body cameras, independent investigations of officers involved shootings, prohibit collective bargaining of disciplinary actions, require mental health screenings, among others. Will you support legislation to implement any or all of the recommendations? And I will call you in order. Again, please keep your answers to 1 minute. Do I see any hands? Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I see Delegate Krimm and then Delegate Pippy.
I was just going to say, I'm going to leave this to my JPR legislators here and judiciary, because they're the ones that are going to have to produce the legislation that would come to the floor. And I just want to say that I'll be in support of the committee's recommendations. And I mean the Judiciary Committee in the House.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Pippy.
I will support law enforcement, and I will support legislation that increases trust and transparency in law enforcement, but it's going to have to be a combination of the two. So I'm happy to take a look at the recommendations from that committee, and I'm sure we'll have robust discussion throughout the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ron Young. And then we'll have Delegate Lewis Young.
Yes, I think we heard 13 bills over 3 days that were introduced in the Senate on these issues. Plus, I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 more. I have one in myself that's a little more comprehensive than the one that was presented. And that is a real strong screening of potential police officers. We can pass a lot of laws, for example, the choking one. But despite passing it, there are officers that are still choking. So I think we want to screen for people that have problems, aggression problems, people that belong to organizations like the KKK, any extreme organization. We need to screen them out and not ever have them come on the force. And that would do, I think, more to reduce the problems than a lot of laws that we might pass. We had long hearings on all those bills without going into all of them. We are again. I think they're all worth considering, but there has to be balance. We have to protect some people that have not been protected. On the other hand, we have to be fair to the police. But there has definitely, and the data shows that a lot of minorities, particularly African Americans, are arrested and frankly killed at a much higher rate than other people. And we need to look at the causes for that and do what we can to prevent it, at the same time having balance. Also, there was an expression used a lot, defund the police, which I think was a horrible expression. But the purpose of it was there are a lot of duties that police perform that could be performed by other people better, and let the police concentrate on criminal activities. So we're certainly going to have the police and they'll be funded, but we also need to look at the causes for the crimes and the behaviors that occur that sometimes the policeman gets called to that possibly a social worker or someone else could respond to and handle in a different and better way.
Okay.
So that we're giving the service, but protecting both the people and the police officers or the other people that have to respond when there is a crisis of some sort.
Thank you, Senator Young. Thank you, Senator Young. Delegate Lewis Young.
Thank you very much. I want to make a statement so that our constituents better understand the process. I think it's somewhat unrealistic to take a position, especially on a controversial issue, before we've had full hearings. While the work group has had extensive hearings, the full committee has not had full discussion, and the General Assembly at large has only seen a few sentences on each of these recommendations. So it would be rather premature to take a position. Now, there are a few things that my colleagues have mentioned that are obvious, such as the chokeholds and more mental health screening. But in all fairness, I don't think that any of these recommendations are going to end up looking the way they are today. This is a bill that will probably go through serious amendments, and I think we need to be open-minded until we hear the final discussion and recommendations. Thank
Okay.
you. But
Thank
we do
you.
need balance. We do need balance.
All right. Thank you all for remarks, for the answers to very important questions that your constituents have been asking. We will now go to our closing remarks from our co-president, Carrie Burson.
I just want to make sure Delegate Cox had his hand raised. I want to make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Delegate Cox, I apologize.
Thank you. I'll be very brief and echo what my colleagues have said. With this focus in the Judiciary Committee, which I do sit on, I'm on the Public Safety Subcommittee, and I have not seen many of these 13 bills yet before the committee, but I can tell you that there are several that are, I think, going to be able to be passed. For instance, last year, I co-sponsored a bill with Delegate Brooks to allow, and the police unions all supported this, to allow a mental health program for officers. The officers, our law enforcement officers are doing an unsung heroes job day in and day out. And unfortunately, when you have one bad person out of thousands and thousands of sworn duty officers, it creates a lot of stress. And obviously going out to wearing that badge creates a lot of stress. So that's going to be a focus. And obviously also, as I mentioned earlier, with the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, there is no question that the private information of officers, that the due process that our Constitution provides officers should be kept in place. So when we go in and review potential cases of undue force or these kinds of issues, we need to protect all parties, just like everyone else has the same protections. And so looking forward to working across the aisle, but making sure that cooler heads will prevail to protect our law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cox. Are there any other answers? Okay, thank you. Co-President Burson?
Hi, I'm Carrie Burson, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Frederick County. I want to again thank our guests and attendees at today's forum, and especially for your patience as we dealt with technical difficulties. It's been fun. In closing, I want to remind all of you that the League of Women Voters is always available as a resource for information on elections, voting rights, and for candidates. The League, as a nonpartisan grassroots organization, encourages informed and active citizen participation in government and works to increase citizens' understanding of major public policy issues. The League of Women Voters of Frederick County actively observes local government meetings and provides community programs such as coffee chats or forums on current issues and topics of interest to county citizens. This forum has been recorded for inclusion on the League's website and live streamed to our Facebook page. We finally got that to work. If you are interested in joining the League of Women Voters or learning more about the local league, please visit our website at www.lwvfc.org.